the wedding that shattered everything. The champagne glasses were raised, the orchestra was mid-crescendo, and then the doors at the back of the chapel burst open with a force that made every head turn in unison. Standing there, silhouetted against the afternoon light streaming through stained glass, was a woman in black. Not mourning clothes, just black. Simple, deliberate, unmistakable. In her hands, she clutched a manila envelope so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The bride, radiant just seconds before in her ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves, turned from the altar, and her face drained of all color. Her bouquet of white roses and baby's breath slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a soft thud that somehow echoed through the entire cathedral. The groom's smile froze mid-laugh, and the woman in black, the bride's own sister, began walking down that aisle with the kind of purpose that makes your stomach drop because you just know, that nothing will ever be the same again. What she was about to reveal would not just ruin a wedding. It would expose a lie so devastating that two families would never recover, a community would be torn apart, and the internet would explode with theories for months to come. This is that story. But before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sisters. The word itself carries weight, doesn't it? It implies shared bedrooms and whispered secrets, borrowed clothes and inside jokes that no one else understands. It suggests a bond that's supposed to be unbreakable, forged in the fires of childhood and tempered by years of navigating life together. But what happens when that bond becomes a chain? What happens when love curdles into something else entirely, something that festers in the dark corners of family dinners and polite smiles at holiday gatherings? Sarah and Emma Thompson grew up in a postcard-perfect colonial house in a suburb where everyone knew everyone, where lawns were manicured and neighbors waved from porches. They were just 18 months apart, close enough in age that people often mistook them for twins when they were young. Sarah was the older one, born in late March with the kind of easy confidence that comes naturally to some people. Emma arrived in September, quieter, more thoughtful, the kind of child who observed everything and said little. Their parents, Michael and Linda, worked hard to treat them equally. Same birthday party budgets, same college funds, same rules and expectations. But equality in resources doesn't always translate to equality in life, does it? And somewhere along the way, in the space between childhood and adulthood, something shifted between these two sisters. Something that no one in their family wanted to acknowledge. Something that grew silently like mold behind a pristine white wall. In high school, Sarah was homecoming queen, not because she campaigned for it, but because that's just who she was. Popular effortlessly, the kind of girl who could walk into a room and immediately become its center without even trying. She played volleyball, got straight A's without seeming to study much, and dated the captain of the basketball team for 2 years in a relationship that everyone called goals on social media. Emma, meanwhile, was in the school orchestra, first chair violin, technically brilliant, dedicated to the point of obsession, but always somehow in the background even when she was performing center stage. She had friends, sure. Good friends, but not the sprawling social circle that Sarah commanded. Emma's boyfriend was a sweet, slightly awkward guy from her AP chemistry class who wrote her poetry and brought her coffee before school. Nice, genuinely kind, but not the kind of relationship that got photographed for the yearbook's cutest couple page. Their parents praised them both constantly and genuinely. Sarah, you did amazing at the game tonight. And Emma, that recital was beautiful, honey. But Emma noticed something that maybe no one else did, or maybe they did and just didn't say it out loud. When Sarah succeeded, people celebrated. When Emma succeeded, people were impressed but not surprised, as if her achievements were expected, almost obligatory given how hard she worked. Sarah made success look like magic. Emma made it look like math. And there's something about effortless success that captures people's imagination in a way that hard-earned success never quite does. Do you see where this is going? Can you feel the weight of always being the other sister, the also sister, the one who's accomplished and loved, but somehow never quite enough? College brought temporary relief. They went to different schools, lived in different cities, built separate lives for the first time. Sarah went to a big state university and joined a sorority, double majored in marketing and communications, and landed internships that turned into job offers before she even graduated. Emma went to a smaller liberal arts college on a music scholarship, studied finance because she was practical, and knew that loving music didn't mean she could make a career of it, and worked 2 part-time jobs to supplement what her scholarship didn't cover, even though her parents had offered to help. She wanted to do it herself, needed to prove something, though she could never quite articulate what that something was. Then came the men. Sarah met David at a friend's wedding 2 years ago. He was in finance, worked for a prestigious firm in the city, drove a Tesla, wore watches that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Handsome in that clean-cut, all-American way, tall with dark hair going distinguished gray at the temples, even though he was only 31. Within 6 months, they were engaged. The proposal was at a Michelin-starred restaurant with a photographer hidden nearby to capture the moment. The ring was a custom-designed platinum band with a 2-carat diamond that caught light like a tiny chandelier. Their engagement photos trended on Instagram. Sarah never meant to make Emma feel small. That's important to understand. She genuinely loved her sister, called her every week, sent her funny memes, and asked about her life. But when you're Sarah, you don't always realize that your good news can feel like a spotlight that casts everyone else into shadow. Emma was happy for her sister. She really was. She commented heart emojis on every engagement post, helped plan the bridal shower, went dress shopping, and cried at all the right moments when Sarah found the one. But late at night, alone in her apartment, Emma would scroll through Sarah's photos and feel something ugly and unwanted coiling in her chest. Not hatred, not exactly. More like grief for a life she would never have, for an ease of existence that seemed to come to Sarah as naturally as breathing, but remained forever just out of Emma's reach. Emma was dating someone too. Mark. They'd been together for 8 months, met through a dating app, had a perfectly nice relationship. He was a high school teacher, played guitar in a local band on weekends, made her laugh, listened when she talked about her day. But he wasn't David. He didn't have David's polish or David's salary or David's ability to make everyone in a room want to be his friend. And Emma hated herself for even making the comparison, for measuring her relationship against her sister's as if love was a competition with winners and losers. The wedding planning consumed Sarah's life, and by extension, Emma's life too, because that's what being maid of honor means, right? Emma attended every vendor meeting she could, weighed in on color schemes and flower arrangements, pretended to care deeply about whether the napkins should be folded into swans or fans. She watched her sister glow with the kind of happiness that seems almost supernatural, the kind that makes people look lit from within, and she smiled. She smiled through all of it. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing special, mid-April with that particular quality of spring light that makes everything look hopeful. Emma had stopped by Sarah and David's apartment to drop off some wedding favors that had been delivered to her place by mistake. Sarah wasn't home yet, but David was. He'd gotten off work early, he explained, loosening his tie as he let Emma in. The apartment was stunning, of course. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine, abstract art on the walls. Emma set the boxes down in the entryway and was about to leave when David offered her a drink. "Just a quick glass of wine," he said. Sarah would be home in 20 minutes anyway. It seemed rude to refuse. They sat on the balcony, making small talk about the wedding, about work, about nothing particularly important. David was charming, attentive in that way that successful men often are, asking questions and seeming genuinely interested in the answers. Emma found herself relaxing, laughing at his stories about the chaos of wedding planning from the groom's perspective. His phone buzzed several times on the table between them. After the 4th buzz, he glanced at it, and his expression changed. Just for a second. A flash of something, annoyance maybe, or worry. He excused himself, took the phone inside. Emma sat there, sipping her wine, watching the city lights start to flicker on as dusk settled in. That's when she saw it. David's iPad was on the side table, screen still lit up. He must have been using it before she arrived. It was open to his messages, and the preview of the most recent text was right there, impossible not to see even though Emma wasn't trying to snoop. The message was from someone named Alex with a heart emoji next to the name. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. I've missed you so much. Tell her you're working late again." Emma's heart started pounding. She looked toward the apartment. David was inside, on his phone, his voice low and tense but too muffled to make out words. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't. But her hand was already reaching for the iPad, tapping the screen, opening the message thread. And there it was. Months of messages, hundreds of them, conversations that left absolutely no room for misinterpretation. Alex wasn't a coworker or a friend. Alex was David's boyfriend. Not ex-boyfriend, current boyfriend. They'd been together for 3 years. They had an apartment together in a different part of the city, one that David apparently went to whenever he told Sarah he was working late or traveling for business. The messages talked about their future, about how difficult it was keeping this secret, about how David promised it was almost over. He just needed to get through the wedding and secure the merger at work, because Sarah's father was a major investor, and it would all fall apart if the engagement ended badly right now. Emma felt like she might throw up. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the iPad. She set it down carefully, exactly where she'd found it, and stood up just as David came back outside. "Sorry about that," he said, smiling that easy smile. "Work crisis. You know how it is." Emma looked at him, really looked at him. This man who was going to marry her sister in 6 weeks. This man who everyone thought was perfect, who Sarah loved with every fiber of her being. This man who was living an elaborate lie. "I need to go," Emma managed to say. Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else. "You okay?" David asked, and there was something in his eyes now, a sharpness, a calculation. "You look pale." "I'm fine," Emma said, "just tired. Tell Sarah I'll call her tomorrow." She left before he could say anything else, before her legs could give out, before she could scream or cry or confront him right there. In her car, she sat gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe, trying to think. What was she supposed to do with this information? Tell Sarah immediately and watch her world explode 6 weeks before her wedding? Stay silent and let her sister marry a man living a double life? Either choice felt impossible. Either choice felt like betrayal. Emma didn't sleep that night. She called in sick to work the next day and the day after that, spent hours pacing her apartment, picking up her phone and putting it down again without calling anyone. She went back and forth 1,000 times. Tell her, don't tell her, tell her, don't tell her. Maybe she'd misunderstood. Maybe there was some explanation that made sense. But she knew there wasn't. The messages were too explicit, too consistent, too recent. She thought about confronting David first, giving him a chance to come clean on his own. But what if he turned it around somehow, convinced Sarah that Emma was lying out of jealousy? Their relationship had always had that undercurrent, that unspoken competition. Would Sarah even believe her? On the 3rd day, Emma finally called Sarah. Her sister answered on the first ring, voice bright with happiness. "Em, I was just thinking about you. We got the final head count, and we're actually under budget. Can you believe it?" Emma opened her mouth to tell her everything. The words were right there, formed and ready. But what came out instead was, "That's great, Sarah, really great." "You sound weird," Sarah said. "You feeling okay?" "Just stressed about work," Emma lied. "Listen, can we have lunch this weekend? Just us?" "Of course. Saturday? That new place downtown you wanted to try?" "Perfect." Emma hung up and immediately hated herself for chickening out. Saturday came. They met at the restaurant, ordered salads and mimosas, talked about everything except what Emma needed to say. Sarah was radiant, showing Emma new photos from their engagement shoot, talking about the honeymoon they'd planned to Bali, laughing about David's useless bachelor party planning skills. Emma watched her sister's face, watched how it lit up every time she said David's name, and something crystallized inside her. She couldn't do this. She couldn't sit here at lunch and casually destroy her sister's entire life over salad and bottomless mimosas. This required proof witnesses, something more substantial than, "I saw messages on his iPad." Sarah would need to see it for herself, would need evidence so overwhelming that David couldn't talk his way out of it. Emma needed time to figure out how to do this right. But time was the one thing she didn't have. The wedding was 5 weeks away, then 4 weeks, then 3. Emma started following David. She felt crazy doing it, like some character in a bad thriller movie, but she had to know more, had to be absolutely certain before she blew up her sister's life. She learned his patterns, his routines. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, he left work and drove not to the apartment he shared with Sarah, but to a different building across town. He'd park in the garage, take the elevator up, and not come back down until late, sometimes not until morning. Emma sat in her car watching that building, watching lights turn on in a 6th-floor apartment, sometimes catching glimpses of 2 silhouettes moving past windows. She felt disgusting doing this, felt like she was betraying both Sarah and some fundamental part of herself. But she kept doing it because the alternative, doing nothing, felt worse. She took photos. She documented dates and times. She even, in a moment of desperation that she'd later feel ashamed about, created a fake social media profile and found Alex. He was handsome, younger than David by several years, worked as a graphic designer. His Instagram was private, but his Facebook wasn't, and there were photos going back years, photos of David and Alex at restaurants, at the beach, at what was clearly their apartment. The photos stopped about 8 months ago, right around when David had proposed to Sarah, but Emma scrolled back through them and felt sick. This wasn't some casual affair. This was a whole separate life. With 2 weeks until the wedding, Emma finally made her decision. She couldn't tell Sarah privately, couldn't risk David convincing her that Emma was lying or mistaken. The evidence needed to be irrefutable, public, impossible to dismiss. She needed to stop the wedding itself. She tried one more time to find another way. She anonymous emailed David from a burner account, told him she knew about Alex and that he needed to come clean before the wedding or she would. He responded once, "I don't know what you think you know, but you're mistaken. Don't contact me again or I'll report this as harassment." That was it. No panic, no confession, just a cold, calculated threat. Emma realized then that David wasn't going to stop this. He was going to go through with the wedding, was going to bind Sarah to him legally while maintaining his whole separate life with Alex. And then it would be too late. The law would complicate everything: assets, finances, Sarah's reputation. So Emma made copies of everything, screenshots, photos, timestamps. She compiled it all into a single manila envelope, the kind lawyers use for important documents, and she planned exactly what she would do. The morning of the wedding was perfect, absolutely, heartbreakingly perfect. Sunny but not too hot, a light breeze that made the ribbons on the pews flutter just right. The church was a cathedral, really, massive and beautiful with soaring ceilings and stained glass windows that cast colored light across white marble floors. Sarah looked like something out of a fairy tale in her wedding gown. Emma had been there all morning, helping her dress, fixing her hair, making sure every detail was exactly right. In those hours before the ceremony, Emma almost chickened out. Almost. Sarah was so happy, talking about her future, about the children she and David wanted to have, about the life they were going to build together. She kept grabbing Emma's hands and saying, "I can't believe this is real, and I'm so lucky." And Emma wanted to die because she knew what was coming, and Sarah didn't. Emma wasn't in the wedding party originally by her own choice. Sarah had wanted her as maid of honor, of course, but Emma had declined, said she'd rather just be a guest and enjoy the day without the stress of bridesmaid duties. The truth was, she'd already known, even back when Sarah had asked months ago, that she might have to do something drastic, and she couldn't do it if she was standing up there at the altar. The ceremony started at 4 p.m. Emma sat in the back, wearing the simple black dress she'd bought specifically for this purpose. Not funeral black, nothing that dramatic, just a plain black sheath dress that wouldn't draw attention until she wanted it to. She watched everyone file in, their parents, both sets of grandparents, cousins and aunts and uncles, and hundreds of friends. She watched David take his place at the altar with his groomsmen, looking confident and relaxed, like a man without a care in the world. The music started. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle one by one. Then everyone stood as the wedding march began, and Sarah appeared at the back of the church with their father, looking radiant and nervous and perfect. That's when Emma stood up, walked to the center aisle, and started walking toward the altar. At first, people thought she was part of the ceremony, maybe a late bridesmaid or a special reading. But then they noticed she wasn't walking like someone who was supposed to be there. She was walking with purpose, with determination, clutching that manila envelope like her life depended on it. The music faltered. People started whispering. Sarah saw her, and her face went from confused to concerned. David saw her, and his expression changed completely, shifted into something cold and furious. Emma reached the front of the church and turned to face everyone. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady despite the fact that her entire body was shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but this wedding can't happen, and I can prove why." She pulled out her phone, connected it to her portable speaker she'd hidden in her purse, and she played a voicemail. David's voice, from 2 nights before, leaving a message for Alex. "I'll be there after the rehearsal dinner tomorrow. God, I can't wait for this whole circus to be over. Then we can finally stop hiding. I love you." The church erupted in chaos. Sarah's legs gave out. Their father caught her before she hit the floor. People were shouting, some at Emma, some at David. David was trying to leave, pushing past groomsmen, but Sarah's brothers blocked his path. Emma stood there in the center of it all, still holding her envelope, watching her sister's world shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The police were called. Not for anything criminal, just to manage the scene, to get David out safely because Sarah's father was threatening violence, and several guests were filming everything on their phones. Emma tried to get to Sarah, but their mother stepped between them, and the look on Linda's face was something Emma would never forget. Not anger exactly, but something worse. Disappointment mixed with horror, like Emma had become someone their mother didn't recognize. The videos went viral within hours. Sister Stops Wedding with Explosive Revelation trended on Twitter. TikTok was flooded with reactions, with people taking sides, debating whether Emma was a hero or a villain. News outlets picked it up. Their family's private catastrophe became public entertainment, dissected by strangers who didn't know them and didn't care about anything except the drama. Sarah didn't speak to Emma for 3 months. She moved back in with their parents, spent weeks in bed, barely eating, barely functioning. The wedding venue still charged them for everything because contracts had been signed. Gifts had to be returned. Vendors had to be notified. It was a logistical nightmare on top of an emotional catastrophe. David, it turned out, had contingency plans. He had a lawyer immediately, tried to spin the story as a misunderstanding, then as Emma manipulating evidence. But Alex, reached by reporters, confirmed everything, told the whole story. How David had promised for years that he would come out, that he would end things with Sarah, that he was just waiting for the right time. The right time apparently never came. David's firm put him on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Not because of the relationship, that wasn't illegal or even against company policy, but because Sarah's father pulled his investment and threatened litigation over what he claimed was fraud. David had presented himself as someone he wasn't to get close to their family's money. That part would end up in court for years. But the relationship between Sarah and Emma, That's what really broke. 6 months passed, then 8, then a year. Emma sent texts that went unanswered, letters that might have been read or might have been thrown away unopened. She tried to reach out through their mother, but Linda's response was always the same. She needs more time. Emma thought about giving up, thought about accepting that this was the price of what she'd done. She'd saved her sister from a terrible marriage, but she'd lost her sister in the process. Was it worth it? She honestly didn't know. Then, on a random Thursday afternoon, Emma's doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, almost didn't answer. But something made her check the peephole. Sarah was standing there. Emma opened the door, and they stood there looking at each other. Sarah had lost weight, looked older somehow, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Can I come in?" Sarah asked. Her voice was quiet, careful. "Of course." They sat in Emma's living room, not touching, barely looking at each other. The silence stretched out until Emma thought she might scream. "I'm in therapy," Sarah finally said. "Have been for months, working through a lot of things. Mostly trust issues, obviously, but also some other stuff. Stuff about us, about our relationship growing up." Emma waited, didn't dare speak. "My therapist asked me something last week that I've been thinking about constantly. She asked if you had told me privately, months before the wedding. Would I have believed you?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "And Emma, the honest answer is no. I wouldn't have. I would have thought you were jealous or confused or that you misunderstood something. David was so good at being believable, so good at making me think I was the center of his world. If you'd told me, I would have defended him. I might have cut you out of my life for even suggesting it." Emma felt tears streaming down her own face. "I tried to find another way. I tried so hard." "I know," Sarah said. "I saw the emails you sent him. I saw everything eventually. My lawyer got access to all his accounts during the civil suit. I saw how many chances you gave him to come clean on his own. You weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to save me from hurting worse later." They sat there crying for a long time, and then Sarah moved closer and they were hugging, and Emma couldn't remember the last time anything had felt this right, this like coming home. "What you did was terrible," Sarah said into Emma's shoulder. "It was humiliating and public, and I've hated you for it. But what he was going to do to me was worse, and you were the only one who loved me enough to risk everything to stop it." "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered. "I'm so sorry it had to happen that way." "I know. Me too." They didn't heal overnight. Healing never works that way, does it? It took more months of careful conversations, of therapy sessions both together and separate, of slowly rebuilding trust that had been shattered. Their parents struggled too. Linda couldn't reconcile the daughter she'd raised with the one who'd caused such a public scene. Michael was caught between defending both his daughters and feeling like he'd failed somehow to see what was happening. But gradually, painfully, the family found its way back to something resembling normal. Sarah started dating again eventually, someone she met through work, someone kind and patient who knew her whole story and didn't run away from it. Emma heard about him and felt, for the first time in years, simple happiness for her sister, without that bitter undercurrent of comparison. Emma herself stayed single, focused on her career, went back to therapy to work through her own issues with feeling perpetually second best. She learned that saving someone doesn't mean you have to destroy yourself in the process, that there's a difference between sacrifice and martyrdom. The internet, of course, never let it go. The video still circulated years later, still got reshared with new commentary, new hot takes, new debates about whether Emma was right or wrong. Strangers who would never know the full story, who would never understand the years of context that led to that moment, felt entitled to judge. But Emma learned to ignore it, learned that the only opinions that mattered were her own and her sister's. 3 years after the wedding that never happened, Sarah got engaged again. To Marcus, the kind, patient man from work. And when she asked Emma to be her maid of honor this time, Emma said yes without hesitation. At that wedding, Emma stood at the altar watching her sister marry someone who deserved her, someone who was exactly who he claimed to be, and when the officiant asked if anyone objected, the whole church held its breath for just a second because everyone knew the story, everyone remembered. But this time, there was only silence, only love, only a new beginning built on truth instead of lies. After the ceremony at the reception, Sarah pulled Emma aside. "Thank you," she said, "for saving me, for loving me enough to be the villain so I didn't have to be the victim." Emma hugged her sister and thought about how far they'd come, how much they'd survived. "That's what sisters do," she said. "So let me ask you something. What would you have done? If you discovered that your sibling, your best friend, someone you loved was about to make a terrible mistake, would you step in? And if so, how far would you go? Would you risk being hated to save them from worse pain later? Or would you stay quiet and let them make their own choices, even if those choices led to disaster?" Emma made a choice that cost her everything temporarily. She became the villain in hundreds of online comments, the subject of think pieces about appropriate intervention, the sister who ruined the wedding. But she also prevented Sarah from legally binding herself to someone living a double life, saved her from years of lies that would have been infinitely more devastating to untangle. There's no easy answer here. Life rarely offers those. But I think there's something profound in the fact that real love sometimes looks like destruction. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is break something before it breaks the person you love. Emma didn't crash that wedding out of jealousy or spite or any of the motivations people online accused her of having. She did it because when you really love someone, their pain becomes unbearable to witness, especially when you have the power to prevent it. Was she right? Was the public humiliation worth preventing the private devastation that would have come later? I don't know. But I know that 3 years later, Sarah thanked her. And I know that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing, even when the whole world tells you otherwise. What's your take on this? Was Emma wrong to stop the wedding so publicly, or was she the only one brave enough to do what needed to be done? I'm reading every comment, and I genuinely want to know what you think. How would you have handled this situation if you were Emma? And if you were Sarah, could you have forgiven her? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story made you think, if it made you feel something, share it with someone who loves a complicated moral dilemma. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories that make you question what you would do in impossible situations. Because life isn't black and white, and sometimes the people we call villains are actually heroes in disguise. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.